No, we know, you know, enjoy like this. We're all clear.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 17th Monday meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Best wishes to all those of the Jewish faith, and I would like to ask everybody to rise and join us in a pledge of allegiance. I would appreciate if one of the Boy Scouts would volunteer to lead us in the pledges. It's not difficult. All you got to do is get us
Yeah,
started.
get started, that's it.
Who wants to do that? So, go ahead.
I believe in you, Ryan. I believe in you.
Let's go.
No.
Go ahead.
Ryan.
Whoever wants to do it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'd remain standing, have a moment of silence for the brave men and women that protect us on a day-to-day basis. And I would also ask that we keep our thoughts to all of the people down south that are going through tremendous flooding, relocation, and hazard incidents. Thank you.
For those out in the real world that are streaming, we have probably 10 or 15 Boy Scouts here this evening to learn a little bit about what we do so that they can pursue their merit badge. And we will take care of that in just a little while. I do want to announce that in executive session, we discussed the police labor matter before this meeting. With respect to other issues on the chairman's report, in fact, there's only one other, and that's Luann Petrellis has submitted her resignation to the Futures Committee. They're a very interesting organization that has helped us mightily in a number of things, not the least of which is they attempt to help us figure out what's going to be coming down the road in 10, 15 years in order to plan for that today so we're not surprised tomorrow. It's kind of interesting. So if anybody has an idea that they would like to be part of that team, just let Rick know, our manager, and we will have an interview and go from there. That said, I want to change the agenda around per request, and I would never not honor the request of our police chief, Brenda Bernat, who really has to give a report here, then scoot down to our friends in Westtown to give the report for them down there.
Scouts, all rise for the chief.
All right, sir. Oh, no.
I'm just kidding you.
That was good, though. They will never get a traffic ticket.
There you go. My son's also an Eagle Scout, so you'll never get a traffic ticket from me. I believe in the scouting oath and what it stands for, and I believe it's a great value to young men. Matter of fact, my son just graduated from college, and during the process of interviewing for his first job, that came up because it was on his resume, and I'd like to think that's a reason, one of the reasons why he got his position.
Great.
It really helps.
It does,
It really helps.
because anybody who's involved in scouting knows how much work goes into the Eagle Scout project.
And the character that it builds.
Exactly.
As
It
a
does.
business owner, that's exactly what I would look at with someone that has this rating, because you pretty much, unless they change, don't have to worry about trust. You don't have to worry about theft. Your customers are going to be well taken care of as far as talking to them. So unless people change, which they can, to have the Eagle Scout merit is a true path to a lot of things in life.
That's right.
For
Vast
sure.
opportunity.
For sure.
Exactly. I only have 3 quick things I'd like to touch on. Number 1, a reminder that the department has an excellent website. It also links directly with our Facebook page, and also we have Crime Watch. So if you're interested in knowing what's going on in your community, who we have outstanding warrants on, crimes we've investigated, all those different things, please visit our website so that you can find that information out. Number 2, the trends. The trends are the same as last month. We're having an enormous amount of frauds and scams going on in the township. Hopefully we can educate everyone so that they don't become victims to that, but please visit our website. There's a lot of information. There's probably close to 25 scams going on in the township right now. And lastly, an invitation. Coffee with a Cup is being held October 22nd from 11 to 2 at the Giant Food Store on Westchester Pike. Most of the time when people interact with police officers, it's in an emergency situation. And as a result, there really isn't very good communication. So we like to hold these events so that individuals in our community can sit down with us in a non-stressed atmosphere and talk about what's on your mind. What are we doing that you like? What are we doing that you don't like? What would you like to see us do? What information do you need from us? What information should we be getting from you? So it's a great opportunity to really talk and interact. So we hope that we'll join you, and Giant is kind enough to sponsor the whole thing on their bill.
What time's 10?
11 to 2.
11 to 2.
So obviously I'd like to see the elected officials there, but I want to see residents there too.
Come for the coffee.
Chief, do you have, we can put some on the website and constant contact about that. Do you have like a canned release or
Yeah,
something
we
you
have
can
a
send?
flyer that we put on our Facebook page. I'll ask Marissa to send it to you.
That'd be great, thanks.
Thanks. Any questions?
Not, we know you're in a
Okay.
hurry.
Chief, we meaning my wife and I were subject of a scam, actually 3 scam calls within the same day of an entity reporting to be a IRS representative. And if you don't respond and call this number, another number that they gave, that you would be subject to possibly, and of course, one of the great giveaways, we know that the IRS doesn't make those kind of calls, but the great giveaway was that the cops will come and get you within 24 hours. Now,
Highly
sometimes,
official language.
you know, I almost want to have fun with those kind of calls, but, you know, you only have so much time in life. But are those the kind of calls that you, that the WEGO department wants to hear from us, or do they, my wife and I talked about this, and I said, I'm not sure they're going to go anywhere. They're getting them all the time. Do you want us to report those to you, or is that just?
Sometimes it is nice to know that it's trending again, because we find that the IRS calls have a tendency to be in patterns. So it's nice to know, because then when we start to see them on the uptick again, we can reach out to those individuals who are particularly susceptible to them. Unfortunately, the IRS scam calls originate overseas. So,
Michael, just for thought, when I call, I must email the chief once a month, because anytime I get a new one, I let her know about it. When you call for an email, just say, this is an FYI, let them determine if they're going to investigate it. If you call with a complaint as a resident, they have to start doing a complete investigation. And it's not that they don't want to do it, but let them make, I just let her know every time I get one to make sure that they're aware of them. Let them make the decision if it needs to go further, because if not, they're going to get bogged down with all these reports that they have to
And
investigate.
that was one, and
Correct.
that's good advice,
Yeah.
Carmen, very good advice.
That's exactly what I do. Am I right or wrong?
you're right, especially if it's something unusual, because as I indicated, we have over 25 scams. The one that's trending right now is the blackmail scam, where they contact you and they say, I've got embarrassing photographs or video of you, and if you don't give me euros, I'm going to, bitcoins, that's it. If you don't pay this ransom in bitcoins, we're gonna release it to your family and friends. So, that's a strange and unusual one, but that's trending right now.
I don't have bits of any kind of coin, so I'm not, and I could even fulfill that request. Thank
Yeah, but you can tell it's originating out of the country, because
Gotcha.
it's either euros or they ask for bitcoins.
Thank you. Carmen, that's good advice, too.
I need to remind Mike that the IRS calls only come to senior citizens, so we know what category Mike falls in.
I'm getting them too, so watch.
Wouldn't it be funny if tomorrow morning the sheriff's knock at your door?
I hope you're not within a 24-hour period.
That's the other scam, jury, you fail to arrive for jury duty and the sheriff's department has a warrant for your arrest, but if you call and get us those green dot cards, we'll let you go this time.
Yeah, we'll pay the people also, you don't get in trouble.
Mhm.
What's you say hello to our friends down the road?
I will,
Give them our best.
I will, take care.
Yeah,
Good
more
night,
love.
everybody.
I gotta back up just a second, just to announce that we did meet in executive session on last last Wednesday, we were doing some interviews for ABCs. And I think there's one other item we need to sneak in real quick, and that is, we have a public comment period for those who would like to ask us anything that's not relative to what's on the agenda. You guys have to sit there for a little while. We'll get to you guys in just a few minutes. We have one person way in the back who's there. Do you have anything?
I'm all good.
You're welcome. Okay, no public comment.
Question. This would be where we face the scouts.
Well, we're gonna get to them. If they have questions, I know they're public. They're all dressed very neatly, and we're gonna give them special attention. So that takes care of that. Now, we wanna go back to our emergency services report. Norman Batavio, Supervisor Batavio, is the fire marshal in this township, and we have asked him each time we meet to get the report for the various fire companies and also the fire marshal. And I would ask Carmen to do that for this evening regarding the Good Fellowship Fire Company and also the fire marshal report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one report for August from Good Fellowship. Basically, just talking East Goshen, they had 58 calls in our township, which is 12% of their call volume, just to give you an idea. And again, that's for East Goshen only. If you're interested in the other townships that they offer services to, I can give you something after the meeting. I also have a report at our Giant on Boot Road. We've had some problems up there with older alarms starting to go bad, duct sensors, etc. We did have another call September 12th. We actually had 2 alarms that went at the same time. We had an accidental pull station, but what's not on this paperwork is we also had an alarm for a fire sensor in the ductwork that was bad. So hopefully the alarm company has taken care of them. Code department will follow up to make sure things have been taken care of. That's all I have. Thank you.
Now, I have to set this stage for you because I'm going to ask Carmen. He loves to do this. He loves to give kind of a summary of who we are, what we do. And for those out in the world, there's 12 Boy Scouts here and 3 parents, I would assume, that are part of the troop, or at least help with the troop. And they're here tonight too, so we appreciate that. So I would like to ask Supervisor Batavio, in a reasonably short period of time, to kind of describe who we are, what we do, what our responsibilities are, how we get here, and that way you will know, and I am sure that every one of you will take prolific notes. And then we're going to have a test before you go out to make sure that you know who we are and what we do. I'm only kidding. Carmen, go ahead.
We are the legislative or executive portion of East Goshen Township. We, through staff, handle everything having to do with any ordinances that are being challenged, with any approvals needed for stormwater, for anything having to do with changing or tweaking what our ordinance allow. They go through our planning commission, then come to us. So basically what happens when someone wants to put an addition on a house and it's too close to your neighbor's property, you want to come to the zoning hearing board, and you eventually want to go through our planning commission, go to the zoning hearing board to get permission to do that if your neighbor is okay with it. So basically we're the executive branch of East Goshen Township. We are elected. We're elected by the population of the township. It's a 6-year term. It's one of the few offices that run for 6 years, and I truly believe that it's worth it. After the meeting, if you'll turn around, the statement on the right, a government closest to its people serves the people best. So we are your neighbors. We live next door. We go to the same church. We go to the same food store probably. We go to the same whatever. If I had kids your age, they would probably be in the Scouts. We represent the neighbors and the residents of our township based on the criteria that we have control over as a second-class township by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Every township is different. You can have a first class, second class. The borough is a city or a borough. So they're all different and they have different regulations. We are a second-class township. Very basically, that's it. We're the top decision makers. After all of our committees get it and come to us, we make the decision of what we feel is best for the residents of East Goshen Township now and in the future.
Basically, the short version of that is we represent the people. We're elected for 6-year terms. We're elected in what they call the odd years, that is the uneven years. Like next year, it'll be 2. Carmen and Janet will be up for re-election if they choose to run. And then 2 years later, somebody else will run it, which happens to be me. And I'm the only one that goes by myself. And then 2 years after that, Mike and David would be back up for re-election. That's how that works. We are, I think Carmen made it, I know why I did it. We are the administrative and executive branch of the government. The legislative branch and the judicial branch is done by somebody else's zoning. Zoning hearing board in particular is the beginning of the judicial branch. So we are here to do the business for the people. Obviously, when we make a decision, we make it on what we believe individually is the best decision to make on behalf of the 18,000 residents of East Goshen Township, and we go from there. If the people like what we've been doing and feel comfortable with us, then we are reelected. If we're not, somebody else gets to be elected and takes our place. That's how the process works. Internally here, the day-to-day operation is conducted or overseen by our manager and our assistant manager, Rick Smith being our manager, and John Olshaw way down there being the assistant manager. And they take care of all the stuff that goes on in day-to-day operation. And obviously they interact with the board almost daily. So that's pretty much what happens here. We are set up with a couple departments. We don't have many. We have a public works department. You can see them outside mowing grass, putting blacktop down in the summertime, plowing in the wintertime, taking care of our open space, taking care of our parks, and that's what they do. There's about 10 people, 11 people in that group. There's a financial group inside the building here, which is led by John Olshaw, who's our Director of Finance. There's a code department, which is led by Mark Gordon, and Mark Miller is the leader of the Public Works Department. And we have a Park and Rec Department that consists of Jason Lang as a single person who has many people who help him on the various and sundry things that we do on behalf of the residents with respect to park and recreation. That said, does anybody want to add anything over here? You guys want to add anything?
You might want to mention the committee structure. Yeah, we have a committee structure you'll hear them referred to as the ABCs, which are committees, boards, and advisors. And so we'll establish a committee based on the needs of the township. So for instance, we have a conservancy board. So when you see trees going up in the parks and so on, the conservancy board might help us make decisions around that. We've got a Parks and Rec committee that advises Jason on Park and Rec's decisions. We now have a pipeline task force that's helping us with some of the pipeline issues that we deal with all that you see the pipelines coming through our township. We just set up a sustainability advisory board that we just won. We're given a gold certificate status by the Pennsylvania Municipal League for our sustainability efforts, and that has to do with how we run our township, how we take care of our environment, how we handle our refuse, how we handle our sewers, how we just basically operate the entire township. We're the only township in Chester County with a gold certificate, and I think there are only 39 in the state with gold certificates. So, but there is a platinum level, so we're working on that as well. So we care about some of the same things you care about as far as the environment and those types of things that you've been well. So the committee structure are residents of our community that advise us when we're trying to make our policy decisions. We have a zoning hearing board, which is a judicial function, but we also have a planning commission, and they are a very important group. They help us decide how we're going to look at developments, building out vacant land, commercial use of property in the township. So that's a little bit about the committee structure.
Not to let Mike Lynch out, Mike's sitting over there, he's the senior citizen that we referred to earlier. Mike was formerly the manager of East Brandywine Township, he lives in East Coast, East Bradford, sorry about that, Mike. Mike, please. I forget what I was going to say. No, he retired last year as manager, became appointed to the board when our chairman then resigned, and he is now the director of finance of East Bradford. And Mike has had a ton of experience over there in longevity. John Walsh will insist he knows more. So I let them battle this out. And then last but not least, we have Janet Emanuel down here. Now Janet was the junior supervisor for a while. And fortunately in the last election, Mike and David came along and she now moved up the ranks to the third in seniority. And with that came the appointment by the board of Janet to be our police commissioner. And she maintained a relationship with a lot of the projects we have going on, such as the Fairway Pike Trail, the master plan for the Fairway Pike area, and some other things that she's doing. She's also liaison to the Planning Commission. So Janet has a very important role, but she's very appreciative of the fact that she's no longer the junior person on the of the five of us here at the board.
Okay, my turn. Being the one female on the board, they don't let me talk. That's just.
That's not a fair thing to say. You're right now.
The one thing that I would hope that you get from this discussion of the various committees and commissions is that you can volunteer to help in the township, you know, maybe not today, but a couple years from now. And we welcome volunteers, we welcome people who have visions of what you want your hometown to look like and to be in the future and to be today. So we're always looking for volunteers, we're looking for people who want to help.
How many live in East Goshen? How many live in West Goshen? Westtown? Any others? Okay. Any of your townships where you live pretty much have the same boards and commissions that we have.
But they're not as good.
Not as good, because we are the best. But you can certainly call them and donate time if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of you might have already done, helping them out on the Park and Rec or their open houses. Always a thing to volunteer. It really makes you feel good at the end of the day. And when you've done it for like 50 years, you really feel good.
One last thing that I'm sure that there's some there, if not all of your folks are going to work your way towards being an Eagle Scout. Often the Eagle Scouts, particularly the ones that live in East Goshen, will approach us to do a project here within the township. We welcome that. A lot of times they're associated with the park, with the open space, but they don't have to be. So if in fact when the time comes that you're looking for an Eagle project to do, you can recommend to us what you'd like to do. You can talk to Rick and talk to the Park and Rec Board about what you have in mind. And if we think it's an appropriate project, then off you go. And many of you that aspire to be Eagle Scouts will find out that you'll enjoy very much working with our folks here in East Goshen.
Can I do Dan real quick, the Eagle Scout? I think I mentioned to you guys that Sunday, one of the Park and Rec guys, Dan Light, and myself were invited, and I did a little bit of speaking for Dylan Golden. He got his Eagle Scout award on Sunday. wonderful award, his parents, grandparents. What he's attained, I would hope some of you shoot for. Really, really nice guy. I think he's going to be headed towards West Point. So I give all you guys the best of credit and the best of good luck in your endeavors. Don't quit. No matter what, don't quit. Thank you.
Okay, the next on the agenda for those who are out there is item number 8. Oh, let me ask a question of Wisconsin. Does anybody have any questions out there for us? Because we stream these meetings, you're going to have to come up to the microphone if you. So I don't want you to be concerned. We're just like the followers that you have out there. You don't have to worry about us. We're not little ogres sitting up here to see if we can trap you. So if you'd like to ask us a question or have something you'd like to say, you're welcome to do it, but you need to do it at the microphone. Anybody have anything? Yeah. Go ahead. What up? I do need you to introduce yourself and give your address, and that goes into the record. See if that's the one. Is that one? Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys made new laws or changed laws.
John, did you get that?
Name and address.
Noel Doherty, 1502 Meadowbrook Lane.
And your question was?
I was wondering do you guys make new laws or change laws within the township?
We can do both. A lot of it may be changing with the times, and we, if needed, we can create new ordinances, which basically is how the township is run with law. So, yes, to both avenues, we can change and or create new.
Have you done any of that recently?
We've done a lot. In fact, we might be allowing, chickens are coming up. We've got a chicken vote, to be allowed to have chickens on smaller properties. We've done probably between changing and new, I would say 30 to 50 a year. A lot of it is changing with the times. Businesses in our township, they want to expand. Well, they're locked into their land, so they need more parking. We have to creatively come up with how to give them more parking, or we're going to lose them.
Yeah.
So we have to constantly change with the environment of what the people are telling us. Major players in our township that have 300 people need more parking. We have to see if it can work, because if not, they're going to move out of the township. We've lost that revenue. So we're proactive of what we need to do to stay with the times.
Let me answer that question this way. We have, I'm not sure if I said it the right way or Carmen did, but we are both the administrative and executive branch, meaning that we do make the laws, and we also, on the administrative side of the township executive branch. Now, what the laws that we make are two kinds. One is an ordinance, and one is a resolution. Resolutions tend to be shorter in term. Ordinances tend to be something that's really long term. That's what we have a solicitor. Sometimes she's here, sometimes she's not, depends on what we're doing. And there's a whole bunch. We have a book that's probably this thick with respect to various rules and regulations that somebody who's doing something has to deal with. And oftentimes, what we don't tonight, there are usually people here that have some reason for coming down here. We've been asked to stream, which we do now, so that people can sit at home or go to YouTube during the week and look at what's going on down here in the township. So that's fundamentally how it works. So I think it's fairly important for you folks to realize who we are, not who we are individually, but who we are with respect to the legislative and the administrative executive branch of the government.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's also important to recognize the codes that we use that are put into place by way of ordinances that are enacted here, initially reviewed by our ABCs and ultimately acted upon by the board. All of those codes, as part of a township of the second class, which was how we're designated, we're all responding, those ordinances are all responsive to other laws and other legislation at the state level or the federal level that are already in place. So we're enacting codes and regulations that have authority given to us by way of either state or the federal government, mostly the state. So that and also something for you guys to know, if you wanted to go onto the East Goshen website, our township code is available there, and you can look till you fall asleep at some of the various codes. Some of them will seem archaic, others will be, oh, I get that. Why limit the number of chickens you can have, et cetera, is one of the examples that was given, but it runs the gamut for all sorts of things associated with how we conduct our business and the way the citizens are supposed to be responsive to the local government, taking care of their properties, et cetera, so.
Let me leave you with this. There's two things that you might want to write down that determine what we can do, basically. One is the township, the code in second-class townships, or the second-class township code, whichever you want to refer to it, and what they call the municipal planning code. That has to do with anybody that comes through here that's going to build something, change something, put an addition on, build a house, anything like that, that has to comply with the municipal planning code. They are generally the two things that where we get the authority to do something. We can't decide to do something on our own. It has to be legislated to us through one of those two codes, or through subsequent court decisions, which there have been many of, which is one of the reasons you have a solicitor, so that the solicitor can keep you on the right track. So that's how we get to be able to do what we're able to do. We can't wander off and just decide to do something because we feel like doing it. It has to be contained in the structure that we have, otherwise we can't do it. That's pretty much the whole pitch that we have. So if you folks have taken halfway decent notes, I would assume you're going to make it through your merit badge.
You got everything other than the first 5 minutes.
And all you have to do is go to the township website, you'll be able to fill in all the blanks.
Or in all else, come in and see David. That's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your coming. You're welcome to stay to see us through. It's not a long agenda tonight, so we'll try to cover it very quickly. For those who are out in the streaming world, the next item is number 8. It's our financial report. And I'd ask our Director of Finance, John Olshaw, to give that report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the August financial report. So just maybe a little more background than I normally do. We have, as the supervisors alluded to, we have sort of 5 things that we focus on, that we take care of in township government. We take care of police. That's by far and away our biggest single expense. We take care of public works, as Carmen alluded to, which is making sure the roads are repaved, they're plowed, the stormwater is flowing through them. The sewer system, when you flush your toilet or wash your clothes, that mysterious place that it all goes, that we take care of that. The sewer system, that's in the Public Works Department. We have the administrative department, which is just sort of everything else in between. And finally, we have Parks and Rec, as people allude to, and then of course, codes and zoning. So when we think about our budget, our general fund budget, we just distinguish between those 4 operating departments. So all total, our general fund budget is a little over $10 million. It's actually very expensive to run a township. Even though we're 18,000 people, it still costs over $10 million to run it. And that doesn't include the cost of running the sewer system or picking up your trash too, which is another big expense that we face. So every month, I give a report to the supervisors about how the budget is going, if we're overspending, underspending, and this is critical because what pays for all of the operations of the township, I ask you, Boy Scouts? Your taxes, yeah, both your property taxes and also an income tax, a small income tax that your parents pay. So as of right now, we have a surplus, a year-to-date surplus of over $1 million in the general fund budget. It's about $1.1 million. That's great. However, we tend to spend money later in the year than beginning of the year. So right now, compared to where I would expect us to be, we're about $350,000 we have about a $350,000 positive budget variance, which is a good thing. So things are in order right now. There are headwinds in the air, however. One of the big things that I'm keeping a careful eye on right now is the earned income tax. As Mike Lynch pointed out earlier, there is concern we're about $90,000 under budget, so that's bad for property tax for the year. Although just before this meeting started, I did get an email from our latest receipts, and that was good news there, so hopefully we're out of the woods there. Real estate transfer tax, if you sell a house or sell a property, right now, as you might know if you follow the financial news, the economy is very strong, the housing market is very strong, people can sell their houses quickly. So the money that the tax money we get from people selling their houses or selling their property is higher than it was maybe 8 years ago in the middle of a financial recession. So all things equal, things are good. My projection for the year, because we do have a lot of expenses still coming up, my projection for the year is we're going to finish, the general fund will finish the year with a deficit, which is bad, of about $200,000. Fortunately, in East Goshen, we have a lot of surpluses, so that we can rely on when we don't have all the money that we hope to in any given year. We're very blessed in East Goshen financially. I would say I'm going to just put this one out there. One of the big determinants of how well we are able to finish the year at budget is going to be dictated tonight. I think this decision about the storefront, if you guys look at when you walk in the door, you'll see there's some corrosion at the front door, and we need to replace that front door. You would think it's not, actually this would be a great Eagle Scout project, frankly, but that's a story for another day. I would encourage the board to remember that the footprint of the building and remember how our capital reserve fund works. And anytime we add new assets, that is a direct hit on the general fund budget. I will leave my comments at that and pipe up again when that item comes up for discussion. Otherwise, I don't have anything else to add, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Just so you know, John is responsible for all this. The $10 million that he talked about is what we call the general operating fund. That enables us to do most of the things that take place. There are other funds we have, like the sewer fund, the trash fund, transportation fund, and so forth and so on. Altogether, the township, the total revenue that we're responsible for is roughly
$14 million.
19
$14
million.
million.
Came down a lot over
$14 million.
Well, he says 14, I think it's 19, but it's John's responsible for all of that along with his folks. And tonight, you don't know this, but he gave us a little lecture about what we ought to do about the replacements of the doors downstairs, because there's some options. And he has his own thoughts, and we may have similar thoughts, or we might have different thoughts. So if you stick around, you're going to see how that works. That said, I will move to item number 9 for those out in the streaming world. It has to do with the approval of the minutes and the treasurer's report. And for those that are here, when we refer to the treasury report, it's a document like this that lists all our expenditures and revenues that we're going to discuss and approve this evening. Norman?
Mr. Chairman, I have looked at the invoices. I've looked at the invoices fairly closely. I do have a question. I don't need to see it now, but I would like the backup paperwork for batch 5 of 6, page 3, the last contractor. And I would like to see 5 of 6, page 4, number 1, the first contractor.
Are they in any way going to be affected by the motion?
I'm going to make a motion that we graciously accept the receipts that we've taken in for the month, and we authorize the payment of the bills once we vote. So I made that motion.
Is there a second? Comments or questions for the board? Anybody out there? It's pretty straightforward what we do. John, you want to explain a little bit what we do really quickly about with respect to this register?
As you know, from Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, legislative bodies have the power of the purse. So we, as staff, Rick and myself, we can't actually cut a check until it's been approved by the legislative body. So what staff does is we prepare a list of all the things that we'd like to pay, all the bills we'd like to pay in any given 2-week period, and then the board comes in and authorizes us to make the payment, or sometimes they say, as Carmen just highlighted, the board might have concerns about certain payments, and they'll flag a couple and say, maybe don't pay this one, but pay everyone else. So that's a very important check and balance that the legislative body has over Rick and me to make sure that we're operating in a above board and transparent manner.
Anybody have any questions on that for John? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Next item, we need to approve the minutes for September 4th. We get these ahead of time. Janet has picked up a couple of spelling things that had to be changed, referred them over to John. I don't have any other comments. Does anybody else on the board have any other comments? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
Comments or questions from the board, from the audience? All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Okay, the minutes for September 4th are approved as amended. We have no public hearing this evening. We have no old business this evening, which brings us down to item number 12 on the list or on the agenda, and that has to do with new business. And it's kind of interesting that the folks from the Boy Scouts are here, because believe it or not, tonight we're going to talk about the SPCA, and we're going to talk about the contract that we have with them, because I suspect that most people have no idea that we have an arrangement with the SPCA to have certain responsibilities with respect to dogs and cats and so forth and other animals in the township. Rick, you want to walk us through this one?
Under the township code, this township board of supervisors responsible for taking care of dogs. 1984, we entered into our first contract with the SPCA, and essentially it allows for stray dogs. If the police officers pick up a stray dog, or a residence capture a stray dog, or however, we have a contract with the SPCA, and they will take care of the dog. The contract that's what we had initially. We have a similar contract now. The current contract calls for a fixed price, and if we pay it by the beginning of the year, it's $1,639. That's for a base service. And then it's so much per dog. The SPCA is proposing to charge us $109.27 for any dogs that are brought to the SPCA from East Goshen. Dogs are brought in by the police department. You see a stray dog, people capture a stray dog, can find a stray dog, they call the police, who then call the SPCA. Or people take them out there on their own. Or you have a dog, you can no longer take care of it, you take it to the SPCA. The SPCA then holds the dog, and they're obligated to hold it for a 48-hour period before they can do anything with the dog. And they have a fee for that, which is $54. But obviously when they hold the dog, they just can't hold it. They have to have it examined by a vet. They have to make sure it has all its shots up to date. And they have to board and feed it. So that's another charge that would be imposed. There's also what they call an activity fee, $43.70, which is essentially a call for service. So if the SPCA has to go out and pick up the dog, it's $109 for the dog, for the adoption, not the adoption, for the putting it into the, taking it in, intake, the veterinary bill, that type of stuff, shots. There's $43 because they had to go pick it up, and then they hold the dog 48 hours. Now, if the dog stays there for any period of time over 48 hours, or next to me, if the dog stays, there's a boarding fee of $50-some. So if your dog got loose, your neighbor or somebody called the police took the dog to the SPCA, and then you went out and picked up the dog, they would charge you, the homeowner, $54.63. If nobody claims the dog, then the township then pays that fee, and then the SPCA disposes of the dog. The last fee that is incurred is $109, and that's for an emergency call that's after hours. Now, they can only be initiated by the township or the police department. In other words, the resident cannot initiate SPCA. One of the interesting things is, I believe, when the SPCA, they changed hands recently, they basically became a no-kill shelter. So right now, they have released, in other words, 96% of the dogs they've taken in. Unfortunately, some dogs are just, they can't be controlled, whatever circumstances are, they have to put down, but they have done an extremely good job of putting dogs back out for adoption. So the contract tonight that the board is asked to approve is for the base contract, is a 5-year deal. The municipality, most of the municipalities in Chester County do participate with the SPCA. They are the full service dog control officer, dog control center. The only thing they will not do and cannot do under state law is the dangerous dogs. So if your dog is declared a dangerous dog and there's a process by which the police department goes through that, then that's done by the state the state dog officer. They oversee that. So, do you have any questions?
Mr., they've done a good job for us in the past. This is not a bid that people are overwhelming to supply us with this type of service. And if we don't contract with them, they will not come out and pick up a dog, or they won't accept a dog. And I believe I'm right. So if we would not pay the contract price, let's say we're gonna, I don't know, forego it for a year, the $1,600. If one of our officers picks up a stray and takes it to the animal shelter, I believe they will not accept that dog. Is that correct?
No, then we would have to bring the dog here, find a place to put it,
Right.
keep it for 48 hours, and yes.
And we can't afford to hire a dog person. So, Mr. Chairman, with some questions, I would like to make a motion that we extend go ahead with the contract based on the information given to us from September 13th concerning the new contract, and just hope that we don't have too many people that are abusing and or letting their dogs run free that they can't be taken care of.
Is your motion to authorize the chairman to sign this?
That is correct.
Second.
I would like to point out, just before we vote on this, that there was, Rick read through for our benefit, a lot of the extra fees that we have to pay. It's kind of like the fixed cost and the variable cost, if you know what I'm talking about. And a lot of the money that comes to maintain and operate the SPCA comes from the municipalities. That's not to say that those, fortunately in Chester County, people are very gracious towards these type of organizations. And they also get money from the from volunteers and people that set up various programs for the to pay. And a lot of people contribute a significant amount of money to the SPCA, so that are dog lovers. As a matter of fact, a number of agencies around here have gone down into the Florence area to bring animals back up here that have been trapped in the water or they were left behind or whatever. And they've done a tremendous job down there. John gave us a little bit of information. On the average, when you look at all the dollars that Rick talked about for the various things that we're charged for, at the end of the year, we generally run somewhere around $5,000 plus or minus. That's what it costs us in a year to have the relationship with the Y and the various charges they have. And what Carmen put on the floor tonight is a motion for me to sign that on behalf of the board, authorizing us to execute that agreement. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Janet, second.
Is there any comments or questions from anybody up here?
Yeah,
I have some questions, comments. I'm not completely comfortable with the contract. One of the items that is on the I guess it's a penultimate, no, it's the second to the last page. It's not listed by page. No, it is, 6 of 9. Payment upon termination by the municipality. Should the municipality choose to voluntarily end this contract before its term, before the term matures, there is an exit fee that they're indicating that the municipality must pay that amounts to 9 months of service fees based on average monthly fees from the prior 6 months. I'm not really comfortable with that. In addition, there should be a clause in there of termination by the municipality for cause, where there should not be fees charged in that case as well. And that would be the cause would be failure to abide by the provisions of the agreement. I know it sounds petty, but you get into these situations, the organizational change that the Brandywine Valley SPCA has gone through in the last number of years. One of the recent ones, provisions that had to be worked out through the managers had to do with insurance provisions. And that was settled. I also am not comfortable with the unclaimed stray boarding fee being a universal charge for every animal that goes in there. A kitten or a litter of kittens being charged $54 for a litter of 10 kittens or the like is just not reasonable. I think there should be a tiered system for these fees. So those are some of the areas I'm not comfortable. I'm not going to try and renegotiate the contract. The managers have done well, but one of my issues over universally with this kind of a service contract is that stray animals and those claimed by the owner, return to owner as they put on their reports, RTO, those owners should be paying for this universally, and we still haven't gotten to that point. So I recognize it's a good service, a lot of great animals there, and they're good people working, but organizationally I am not completely comfortable with the provisions of this agreement. It's weighted in their favor. I know it's a community service. I share my comments. It does not mean I'm not going to vote for the motion in the affirmative that's before you.
I should point out that Mike raises some good points, in addition to which this happens to be a 5-year contract. Mike, your comments about cause, either us volunteering to ourselves initiate withdrawal or the SPCA not following through on their requirements, and there's a cause to terminate the agreement, is a little difficult to argue with. And if in fact you believe that, it seems like, if nothing else, those two items need to be incorporated in this agreement before we execute that. I'm not trying to make life more difficult for Rick or John, but at the same time, I kind of think that you got a good point there. The likelihood of either one of them happening is not great, but I do recall the angst that Delaware County went through when they could no longer take in these animals. And they had a big fight down there as to who was going to do this and how it was going to work and all that. And they work a little bit differently than we do up here. We work a lot better. So you never know what's going to happen in the future. So I would say, in order to protect ourselves and the SPCA, that I think that it might be prudent for Rick or John to work out a couple paragraphs that might be added to this agreement before we approve it, or at least work with the SPCA, because there are other communities that are involved, and they may or may not feel the same way we do. So I would ask that this be postponed for at least till the next meeting and find out the take of the SPCA and also the impact on other communities, good or bad, so we know what we're doing before we do it. Because we may be the only one that wants to do this, and the others don't care. So I think there's a little problem here that we may have to work with our peers.
This agreement was the result of negotiations with the other managers and the SPCA. We negotiated the termination provision down from a year to the 9 months. And they did talk about the kids at the meeting. My understanding, they're not charging you $54 per kid.
It's per.
Yeah, when they do kittens, they make allowance for the kitten.
Right.
Same true with dogs that are pregnant when they come in?
No, when a dog walks in the door, it's either one dog or it's, no, as I said.
You can't carry, they can't carry in some with them.
Mr. Chairman, I think this has been worked on by the managers and the rest of the other players. I understand the concern of this, but I believe with what the managers in the other townships have put into it, that it may be impossible to work this down any lower after what they've done, but if you certainly want to delay it, I can understand it. I just don't know if it'll do any good.
I just don't hold, in conversations with the SPCA, again, we started with the insurance, which was the biggest issue, and we back and forth on that. And the SPCA, our understanding is the SPCA is basically it's like, this is our contract. My understanding is Delaware County has a similar contract. However, in Chester County, we're all paying the $1,600. Delaware County is higher because they do not do the participation with the adoption and the other stuff. They're more I use the word takers, as opposed to the Chester County folks were the givers. I will go back, but I just want to be board aware that I do not believe you're going to get changes.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Rick. I just merely, in my comments, as I said in closing with my comments, that I'm not going to oppose this and not vote in the affirmative for it. I just feel that the organizational changes of the Brandywine Valley SPCA, it's been weighted more to them. I recognize they need to recoup costs. Some of the contract provisions in the insurance one was a good one. They just tried to push. The managers did work. They got that change. That was an important provision, but that was the main focus. I would continue to remain uncomfortable with the way the services are provided and billed, but I'm not going to oppose this particular agreement at this point in time. And again, I will vote in the affirmative.
And if I could put this into perspective, every dollar of a taxpayer spent item is very important, but we're talking $1,600 a year. I'm talking to the scouts. We're talking $1,600 a year plus extras. So let's say it's $5,000 to hire an attorney to do work for this township. $5,000 would be about 10 hours or less of service. Just to give a perspective, money is very important, but the SPCA does do a service that is critical, unfortunately, because of strays and so forth. But you know, we're talking a minimal end of the scale of financial expenses.
Mike, I would suggest this is a solution here, that we take your comments on the various items and ask Ricky to keep them, a list of them with the file, so that when the contract comes up the next time, they consider these things as part of the next agreement.
I think that's good. I appreciate that. Thanks for hearing my comments.
Okay.
Valid.
We have a motion. Anybody out there have any comments or questions? Anybody have any more up here? The motion on the floor is basically to authorize the chairman to execute this agreement, and we will maintain a list of the concerns that Mike raised for future negotiations. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Please do that. See, sometimes we have interesting things to do, sometimes we have boring things to do. The next item is consider the stormwater management agreement for 1506 Meadowbrook Lane, and that request is to authorize the chairman to execute that agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize you to execute the stormwater management operation and maintenance agreement for 1506 Meadowbrook Lane.
Second.
Members or questions from the board? From the audience? As part of water quality in our streams and everything else, you explained that already?
Yeah, I had met with the scouts earlier this evening and told them what I did, but I did give a heads up about what was on the agenda.
Ah, terrific.
That's why they're here for, they wanted to hear about, they were very interested in dogs, Marty. Very interested in dogs.
Hey, Mike, they're interested in dogs.
Well, I guess I'm probably the evil guy now because I'm against the SPCA. I'm not a bad guy. Four dogs? 4 dogs?
4 adult dogs.
You don't mean 4 dogs as in the 4 Dogs Cafe.
I knew somebody had to go there.
The 4 adult dogs rule.
Let's call the
They were
motion
very
before we get
interested.
there. You know, yeah, when the hour gets a little bit later, this group over here, we lose it up there sometimes. I'd like to call the question if there's no more comments or questions from the board. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump down just one to item D before we get to item C, just a matter of time. And that has to do with a in-law suite agreement for 202 Brook Drive. Is there a motion on the floor to authorize the chairman to sign that agreement? Somebody?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Comments or questions from the board, from the audience? Anybody that has an inland suite, there's a agreement they have to sign with us that has certain conditions to it that they must follow both before they go in and if they end up not having to use it anymore. That's what that agreement's about, generally speaking. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, the next item that I postponed goes back to item 12C, and it has to do with replacement of the entrance doors downstairs, and there's 3 different types of opportunities we have, and I would ask Rick if he would like to explain that for everybody's benefit before we make a motion with respect to that.
Just for the scouts' benefit, if you go to our webpage, eastgoshen.org, click on Boards of Supervisors, or excuse me, on our webpage, and then at the top of the, middle of the top of the page, you'll see Board of Supervisors, and it has today's date. If you click on that link, the agenda will come up and all the supporting documentation. So if you want to go home and read the SPCA contract, it's there. If you want to read about the in-law suite, it's there. So.
I guarantee you, if you read that SPCA contract, you will fall asleep before you get to the end. Absolutely guaranteed.
So the townships, we need to replace the doors in the front of the township building. Unfortunately, and in order to do so, there are certain rules we have to comply with. Going forward, they have to be ADA compliant, means American with Disabilities compliant.
That's a federal regulation.
That's a federal regulation,
Comes down to us.
which essentially means that for this type of building, you have to be able to push a button and the doors open. And the doors have to open so that the person in the wheelchair can enter the building. The other requirement we have to have is we can't, and we have 2 sets of double doors. And so both of them have to open, both sets have to open. The other requirement is we can't reduce the width of the opening. Somebody would say, well, listen, as opposed to having 2 doors, let's just put a single door on in each side of the vestibule. No, we're not allowed to do that because that's reducing the width. So we solicited bids, and which meant that the township engineer put out bid specifications. They had a site visit where people came and looked at the building, and then they submitted sealed bids. And we received sealed bids from 2 firms, Donald Riesinger and another company called F.W. Howler. And there's 3 options. Starting with the option 3. Option 3 replaces the existing doors in kind. The doors being the same location. There will be 2 push buttons, one on the inside, one on the outside. The downside of that option, which is the least expensive, is that when you push the button, both doors open and they stay open for a period of time to allow for the person in the wheelchair to enter. And this gets back to the same thing your parents tell you when you come in the door, shut the door so you don't let the heat out or the air conditioning out. So that is an issue with option 1, or option 3. Option 2 involves keeping the interior door, set of doors, and then moving the exterior doors, moving them all the way out to the front where you first go underneath the opening into the brick part of the patio, and then putting another non-accessible door, just a regular door on immediately to the left of that. That makes the area between the accessible doors, which is the double doors out by the front of the building and the ones by the lobby, far enough apart that you can have two separate push buttons, which gets you back to the original intention. Person goes, opens the front door, they walk in, the door closes, they then open the second door, and again, that reduces the heat, some of the heat loss issue. The third option involves doing those, making that same modification, changing the interior doors, changing the exterior doors at the front of the building, where you first come in off the parking lot into the wall, and then moving that side door from immediately to the left of the main door down to the other side of that vestibule area. So essentially under that option, the bench, the bulletin board would all be within the space that's heated and cooled. So option 3, which is the least expensive, replaces them in kind, however it does have an issue with the energy loss. Options 2 or 3 both address that issue with the energy loss, and I guess the bigger difference between option 3 is whether or not option 3, do you want to expand, make the vestibule a little bit bigger?
Rick, Rick hasn't said this, but it's weird the way they identify the options, but option 3 is the one that's least expensive. That lowest responsible bid on that was $38,000. That was the one that's replacing the 2 doors in kind, the ones that are there today. Option, what they call 2, is replacing, going to the outside and also the door to the left, so that there's an area down there that's within this confined area, but it's not the entire area. Option, what we call 1 here, that, or I should say the one I just described was $76,400. If you enclose the whole area that Rick described, which means you gotta put a window in the front, or behind, right in front of the seats, and you gotta move the door over and so forth, that option costs $99,700. So the question becomes is, what the board feels is appropriate. John, earlier when he was, you might not have picked up on it, but he was suggesting that maybe how we ought to go about considering what to do. So, that said, in order to get some kind of discussion going on, the chair would entertain a motion with respect to one of these options, and I would appreciate if somebody would do that.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we consider the selection of Donald Reisinger as a low bid for option number 2. I think that's a middle ground between the 2 expenses, accomplishes what we're trying to do, and provides a bit more space.
You're gonna need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, comments or questions?
Rick or John, if we were to start going towards what I'll consider a green building, which we've done some things in the past, would option number 1 have more points, so to speak, than option number 2, if we were thinking of starting to go more green, or a green building, or doesn't it matter, or don't you know?
Yeah, I don't think as far as green goes, first of all, I don't know that there's any material difference between 1 or 2. And there might be, might be 3, as Rick said, you have this once a year situation where, it's a cold day or it's a super hot day and both doors are open for more than 30 seconds, and there's a loss of heat, but I don't, my personal take on it is it's not a systemic problem.
I take a look, is anybody over here want to comment?
I just took a walk downstairs just now because I knew this was coming up for discussion. And if you are standing in the area before you come in the main entrance door, realizing you're going to have another door right behind you, That seems to me to have a little bit of a clogging value, especially, well, when the button is pushed, both doors would open. But it also, I think, could have some sort of a clogging issue, maybe not for tonight's meeting, because we only have 12 or 14 people, but any meeting that might get into a lot of people, even planning commission, may need that extra room of that additional area being protected. Just a thought.
Janet, you want to say anything?
I also took a good look at it when I came in this evening. And if you take option 2, which has a door immediately on the, as you go out on the left side, as you come in on the right side, plus the door in the front, it's a very small area. I've had to use the ADA doors with a wheelchair, and if you were going to do that and someone else was coming in from the other side, it would be impossible. I think that if you look at that area, it's even with the larger option 1, it's still quite small, and it would be, I believe, even though it's a higher cost, it would be much more useful in the long term.
So what for option 1?
Option 1.
I just want to make sure, okay.
I myself think the idea of enclosing the entire space is important for a number of reasons. When the building was built, it was a different board here at the time, and there was decisions made, not necessarily by the majority, well, the majority of the board, but not necessarily the whole board, about what we should do down there. We have no plans to move from here. This building's been here since 1992. It serves us very well, and I would expect it's going to continue to serve us very well for years. And I think the appropriate thing to do is to do it for my term, what is right, and that is to create as much space down there as possible. Twice a year we have an election here. That would be very helpful in an election, particularly if the weather's bad. At the same time, there's often meetings here where people have brought engineers and consultants in and so forth and so on. When they go downstairs, they tend to want to talk about what they learned up here. If it's a really nice day, they're certainly going to go outside and probably stand here and talk. However, if it's cold or it's really hot or the weather's rainy, they're going to stay inside. There's seating there. There's much more space than if you do option number 2, which is the 2 doors relatively close to each other. So I'm a very strong proponent of option 1, and I don't want to think that anybody to think that I'm not very conscious of how much money we're expending for whatever decision we make, because I am. However, I think it would be foolish to do anything else in that, because you're gaining a lot of space with that additional couple thousand dollars, or more than $20,000, roughly $22,000. You're gaining a lot more space than you're getting with the first $76,000 if you take option number 2. So to me, it doesn't make any sense to not give yourself the full use of the entire area down there. And there also happens to be, if you want to use it, a means of heating that area. There is a wall thing that,
Electric wall heater.
well, no, it's not a wall heater. The wall heater is on the inside, but you can heat. There's a duct that heats the outside underneath the seating if you go out there and look at it. So you're going to have basically an area that can be heated and cooled to a degree, and it gives you more space. And I think the incremental cost is worth that additional space, and that's how I intend to put it.
I would like to just comment. I did a little matrix, and I was kind of looking at the benefits of each one of the plans. And from an energy efficiency standpoint, 1 and 2 are good. From I like the idea of having, as we said here, after a lot of these meetings, we have people that go out and stand outside and talk. I like the idea of maintaining kind of a covered outdoor vestibule, because the doors do lock after meetings and people can't get in. And from a cost perspective, number 2 and 3 obviously win. So I don't think that the extra $23,300 is beneficial. So I'm actually supporting the motion for option 2. I'd like to maintain that little covered outdoor vestibule down there.
Could I ask the chairman, I'm sorry, David, I cut you off, you were still.
That's okay, no, I was finished, thank you.
Could I ask the chairman for a 4-minute recess, and what I'd like to do is take the scouts downstairs
No.
and show you what we're doing, and let
They're
you
not
guys.
making- no, they're
We
not
looked at it on the way in.
Why not, just let them see what we're doing.
I'd like to make this, I'm gonna ask the recording secretary that this be added to the minutes. We budgeted $35,000 for this, okay? If you guys, that was a very deliberate decision, $35,000. When we're talking about tripling a budget, I think that is appropriate to postponing the decision until next year. I think that overspending a budget by threefold is something that is outside the parameters of what was agreed to during the budget season. I rest my case.
This would be a budget amendment requirement as well?
No, but it's completely outside the scope. This isn't like a 10% overrun, this is a threefold overrun. If the board wishes to do this, I would suggest it be deliberate and do it as part of the budget process, add that kind of money in so it can be discussed in a more deliberate fashion. There was, for my, in my opinion, there was not a recognition of what the budget document says as a planning document compared to the amount of money we're talking about. This is an expense that would have to be completely borne by the general fund. And that's a lot of money. This is a new asset. This was never been depreciated.
John, I agree. I understand what you're saying. For the benefit of those that are here, when we do the budget process, we ask our staff to estimate what things are going to cost from various items that we don't know. We don't go out for bid at the time. We don't do that. We take our best guess. We talk to people that know. We bid what we bid. We put in a budget what we thought it might be. It turns out to be considerably more expensive than what it was going to be. The money's going to be spent one time or the other. There is an issue of timing with respect to impact on the end of the year balance. It's also true that if we don't, in our capital reserve fund, we have all kinds of things in there which we depreciate over their life, so we have the money available to purchase that piece of equipment or whatever it is that we're talking about at the time. When you have a new piece of equipment, we don't, up until this point, we haven't depreciated anything because there's really nothing there to depreciate. We're talking about something that's new. That means we have to take it from the general fund, whether we do it this year or next year, and then we put it into our capital reserve, of which we can depreciate it over the life of that, expected life of that equipment. So there is an impact on what we have to do, and I think we all understand that. John is right about the timing, but if you go downstairs and look carefully when you leave there and you look around, you're going to realize that after this building was built in 1992, it needs a lot of work down there. It's pretty ugly, and the front of our building is not as welcoming as it could be, to say the least, in my opinion. So, while I appreciate what John is saying, and it's a timing issue, there was a good faith effort to put the right number in the budget. It turns out to be, it wasn't as much as what it should have been if we had known everything we knew at the time. But it doesn't alter the fact that down there needs to be fixed. And in my opinion, it needs to be fixed sooner rather than later. So if you're going to fix what needs to be fixed, you might as well do it right while everybody's here at one time, because otherwise you're going to increase the cost. So
Rick,
I appreciate what you're saying, John.
Rick, I have a question. I know that there's considerable maintenance that needs to be done on those front doors, which is why we have to replace them. Would there be an issue if we waited until next year?
No, I mean, unless the door actually breaks or something, but no, I mean,
I don't think it's.
there's not a main, no, it's not
I don't
a,
think
they
No
function.
imminent failure.
There's no imminent failure.
Okay, anybody else up here? Michael?
No, I appreciate everybody's time.
Anybody out there? You guys, anybody choose to weigh in on this thing? If not, I'll call the questions. The motion on the floor is is for option number 2, which is the smaller of the two. New options is more expensive than replacing it in kind. So I will call that motion on the floor made by Mike. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion, all those opposed? Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion's carried, motion's defeated 3-2. Is there a motion to do something else?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we complete some of the facade at the front of the building to start dressing it up and choose option number 1 from the Donald E. Reisinger Incorporated for $99,700 to perform the outline of what is registered as option number 1.
Second.
Comments or questions from the board? Bring back to the same place we were, septic. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
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 Nay.
Nay.
Motion's accepted 3-2. John, you want to put in the record who voted for the motion?
Again, my question is the timing. I fully understand John's comment that it isn't in the budget, and I don't know, while I approve doing it, I'm not sure that whether it has to get done in 2018.
Gina, Mike, I was gonna actually comment, Marty called the vote fairly quickly. I was gonna comment to support what John recommended. It's 3 months. And I think the decision could have been delayed and put into the budget process.
We can do that.
And I support that as well. That's a good go around perhaps.
We didn't include a
We didn't.
date in the motion,
The
so.
chair
I
accepted
would
another
also-
motion with respect to the timing. We didn't
Mr.
talk
Chairman,
about
I
the
will
timing.
make a motion that the option number 1 for $99,700 be approved now, but put on the books to be done in 2019.
We need, no, wait, there's a completion date, because, so we have to battle the contract. In other words, the contract has so many days to put it in. There may be enough days at the end of the thing, may not get it done until next year anyway, but I don't think we pushed it back to her.
I would suggest then that the bids be rejected and that we go out for new bids at such time.
No, I suggest we check with the supplier to see what he thinks about the schedule. I think we make a motion, if we can defer it till next year, we do so. And if in fact that doesn't comply with what the contractor, the current contract that we approved states, then we come back and adjust the date accordingly.
I should say from
I
my
don't see any
perspective,
reason to withdraw a bid.
it's not going to necessarily change my vote on that option, number 1. In my opinion, the need has not necessarily been proved for a limited use situation. In the time I've been on the board, I've not seen that kind of congestion or issues. We've not heard it from the public. And there comes a point where the spending has to be a little bit more in sizing and $20,000 here, $20,000 there. It's easy to spend, it's harder to save. So I will continue to maintain that position and probably not support option 1 at irrespective of what time it is going to be done.
Out of all respect to everybody here, please take this in the right strength. The front of our building looks terrible. We are a premier township. Now, I understand money is money, but we are spending $500,000 and $600,000 on some other stuff. Very important for the future, very important for millennials, very important for these young men and young ladies when they grow up. The front of our building is in pretty bad shape and looks aged. And I believe this is a way to dress up the initial entrance to this township just like we try to dress up when people come into the township with what we show them with our open space, with our parks, with what we presently have. So I am still for option number one, if it can be done and deferred until after January 1st, I'm fine with that. If the contractor says there's going to be a 3% escalation if you wait, I would then challenge that and say no. You know, I think we'll give you the job, but you hold that price for 3 months. You know,
Mr. Chairman, it's
and just
obvious
work it out.
it's obvious that further deliberation is required on this issue. So I suggest that we table the motion and consider it at a future meeting.
I hate to say this, but my opinion, I think we've got a difference of opinion. Folks, you're here tonight, we very rarely have the situation come up that we have here. There's not agreement on the board. It doesn't mean we can't do it, but usually we don't do it. I don't see any reason to do anything other than check with the supplier. And I agree with Carmen, if there's a price increase to wait, then we do it now. At the end of next year, we're going to be in the same position relative to this than we would be if we postpone it. So in the great scheme of things, it's going to have some impact this year, but if it adjusts itself next year. So if you believe that what we call option number one, is the full one, is the way to go, which 3 on the board do, I don't think those 3 are going to change. I don't think the other 2 are going to change, and there's no reason to go messing around. Rick will find out what the situation is with the vendor and come back to us, and if we need to make some kind of adjustment, we will. I see no reason whatsoever, unless you two over here think there's a reason to withdraw that, but I don't see that.
I agree with Marty, our chairman.
I'm fine.
Matters done. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which I can't find my agenda, which is over here, and that is, Ricky, any other matter? Do you have any other matter, Rick?
No.
Anybody on board?
No.
Read. There's no liaison reports tonight. There are 2 correspondence, and I want to address one of them. And that one of them is not the first.
The second one with Dr.
No, I did that. We did that already. I did that first before the other one, so I could talk about that.
I'm sorry, Michael.
We already did that one. The remedial action involves the gas station across the street. I don't have any problem with that. Does anybody up on the board have anything they want to ask about that?
No.
I want to go into we got a letter from Aqua regarding a rate increase. And now, rate increases work for utilities. The PUC, which is the one that has jurisdiction over utilities, whether it be electric utilities, gas utilities, water utilities, or whatever.
PUC is the
Public Utility Commission. They're the ones that approve rate increases. And they have 9 months to decide what they want to do. They could do it right away, or they could wait 9 months. If you look at the information here, the amount of the rate increase in this area is around, in this zone that they call it the mainline division, is 15.41%. Now that's a big percent. Now there's a number of reasons for that. However, one of the reasons has to do with an act that was passed by the legislators where the utility, a water utility, has the ability to include some of specific costs from the wastewater treatment facilities in the facility that supplies water. Now, that makes no sense to me whatsoever that we here have to pay for some cost that's been occurred, which has to do with depreciation. Because of the fact that they have established a wastewater treatment subsidiary, so to speak. And I might.
You got it backwards. The water is taking over, it's the water going over to wastewater, not the wastewater.
Wastewater comes to.
You got it backwards.
You mean to tell me?
Are you sure?
No, Rick, no, you can't be right, because the wastewater, if the wastewater was already there, it would be done. It's not a problem. It's the corporate entity can
Act.
take over some of the accumulated
Act,
water.
Act
Act
11.
111 is wastewater.
Act 11,
Yeah.
among other things, enables water and waste load operations under a single corporate ownership
Correct.
to petition the PUC to allocate a portion of the wastewater's cost of service to the water customer base.
That's right, to the water customer.
You said
You're
that, you said the other way.
We're double dipping.
The bottom
No, you
line
said the
is
other way.
melding these two
I said
together
it- I
and
said
charging
something
the
about
water
it.
customer for
Maybe I said
sewer
that.
operations. That
I know what you meant.
that's what I'm particularly opposed to, not the rate percentage increase necessarily, and that will be worked down between the Office of Consumer Advocate and the PUC itself. But this ability to petition the PUC for permission to allocate a portion of the wastewater cost of service to the water customer base where it has demonstrated it is in the public interest. What is that? That's where I hope
That-
the consumer advocate.
They're double
no.
dipping because they own a lot of the wastewater.
That is Act 11.
Yes.
Which was adopted, and signed, I guess by Governor Corbett, and the PUC, and I'll send you the link, but if you go to the PUC webpage and bring up the docket number, the top one, there's a 59-page document that specifies exactly what the
So,
PUC did.
in the interest of just cutting to the chase, I might suggest that someone on the board make a motion directing Rick to write a letter to our legislative delegation and the governor opposing Act 111 and asking for amendments to it so that these sorts of things don't happen in the future.
I was going to suggest something along that line, but yours sounds much better.
And it's not changing Act 11 per se, it's negating this petition
No,
to permit the allocation.
Act 11 allows them to do it. Our remedy would be to petition the PUC that it's not in the public interest.
Gotcha.
So
Act
we need
11
to,
allows it,
so in other
but
words,
oppose the petition.
so,
I got you.
I think.
for the scouts purposes, the PUC typically gets these petitions, the utility asks for some number that's up here. The PUC looks at it, and usually they don't go all the way down, but they do reduce it down. So the odds of there being a 15% rate increase are probably slim. There will be a rate increase, somewhat less. But why don't we do some research to find out how we should best oppose the rate increase?
Okay.
And I'll report back to you.
On behalf of our
Well,
residents.
then we have
that's
some
what we have to
information.
do.
We have time to do that.
The first thing I would ask Rick is to contact the water company to find out two things. One is their justification of it's in the benefit of the
Public interest, what is the
public interest. And second thing is the net amount of money that's going to be in the mainline
Yeah.
division with respect to that, what's going to be thrown into the rates.
At the last document, it was about 1,500, 1,600 pages worth of stuff, so we'll produce it.
Just ask them, no, well, there's a number that's going in there so that they got the total
More
amount of the
than-
increase.
there's
Just
a-
ask them
there's a-
what that number
There's
is.
a lot of numbers in there.
Well,
But let me poke around and see what we can find out.
At the end of the day, we need to tell them on behalf of our residents that it's too much and it can't happen.
The point here is, it's kind of interesting. I know there's adults here, and I know some of the scouts are already adults. It seems to me that when you have a utility and you're supplying water, you shouldn't be able to take money that hasn't been, when they purchase stormwater, or when they order, a municipal system, what they do is they buy municipal systems like ours,
Sewer system.
sewer systems. And they put a price in, and the municipality accepts it or not accepts it. When they accept it, they don't necessarily deal with the full depreciation that's approved. And that's basically what they're adding into the water rates. Now, I will tell you, around this neck of the woods where we are, every municipality has service to some municipal organization. It could be Valley Forge, it could be West Goshen, where we provide about 2/3 of our wastewater. We have our own plant. Westtown has their own plant. Upper Darby has Westchester has their own plant. Nobody has a plant that's purchased by the water company. Now, how in the world we should have to pay for it? Now, we up here are A, residents, just like you are, and B, we're representatives for the township, and in the material, there's an increase in what it costs for a certain level of service for industrial or commercial type customers, which is entirely different than the residential rates. So I will tell you, we have an impact here on this issue. It's twofold. One is selfishly ourselves, and it's also the residents. And I would think the adults here would want to look into this thing or find out what we're going to do eventually, because this makes no sense whatsoever to have the water customers pay for a portion of this, of wastewater treatment facilities that they make some money on. It doesn't make any difference. It makes no sense to me. And I think the board feels the same way.
Right, to simplify this, east is east and west is west. East is the water, west is the sewer. They have two completely different dimensions. And to garner money from the water customers to pay for sewer operations is a confounding of a enterprise that should be distinct. Water treatment and clean water that we can drink and wash, and sewer that our water needs to be reprocessed so it can be reused. It is a cycle, but the enterprises are different. And in this case, Aqua, over the last number of years, has taken it upon itself to acquire as many wastewater systems as it can and build its enterprise, but it's a separate enterprise. And that's the main issue, and that's why I use that analogy of east is east and west is west.
Double dipping.
Well,
I
we
would
only have about
suggest-
another hour, so.
Wait a minute, time out. I want to suggest that Rick takes John's suggestion, which is independent with finding the other information that Rick has spoke about, and put the legislators on record that we think we're just opposed to this at the level. I think it's ridiculous because that's the root cause of the problem. So you got to get that fixed before you do anything. But it would be very nice to find out exactly what the
On with
component
that
of it.
was good.
So anyway, I will tell you, don't get too excited out there, fellas, you wanna read about this, because you can get back in 2012, the PUC made a decision on this whole issue that we're talking about. And if you get the document, which I haven't read yet, but it's at least 59 pages. So if you wanna be truly bored, you get a copy of that before you put your head on the pillow, and you try to read that, and just compare that to the little thing we were dealing with the SPCA. It's an entirely different world. But if you want to know what the PUC goes through with things, and because they control an awful lot of your life directly, then if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go to a website and get a copy of that. That order goes back to sometime in 2012. And if you want to read it and see, it's very fascinating. But we'll take care of what we have to do. For the adults that are here, if you want to keep checking with us to find out where we stand on this stuff, we'll let you know.
Mr. Chair, if it's your pleasure, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait a minute, we gotta get a motion to accept John's recommendation.
I would make a motion that we accept John's recommendation of what we just discussed to make our feelings known.
With respect to our opposition to Act 11.
That's correct.
And we authorize Rick to do a couple other things in terms of the snooping, I'll call it the snooping around process.
We'll do some additional.
Second. All in favor?
Wait a minute. With that, in fairness, you guys had discussed, have anything you want to question us on?
One of you is going to close with the Scout motto, so be prepared.
It is the scout motto.
I know this. All right. There's a motion for adjournment, and I'm going to second it with the caveat
It's already been seconded.
that one of you do the Scout motto as closing. All right, well, we have to vote on it.
All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Good luck to all of you. Just remember, if you got any projects you want to think about, those that are heading onto the Eagle Scout Trail, let us know, and you and your dad can put something together, and we'll be more than willing to cooperate with you.
Anybody want to do the Scout motto? 1, 2, 3. Okay, be prepared. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Rick, I'm letting you give everybody all that information.